And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTK.com. Sam Webb, Ira Weintraub, and the MGoBlog Roundtable crew back with us as we talk about Portal Edition. Maybe the Wolverines will be able to chase another. We will also kind of get into, do we have to adjust our expectation for a level of competition as I give a nod first to Seth Fisher.
How you doing, man?
I got to start with Seth because when we were last all together, he said you're just not dealing in reality, Sam. Yeah. Of course, we should want to keep Eric Bakich. Of course, he's a really good coach. You cannot compete with Clemson when it comes to college baseball. The ACC, the South, how baseball is valued on that campus, you cannot compete if you're Michigan with that. Seth Fisher, you're
right. I'm not happy about it. I do want to amend some of what I was saying because I was pushing really hard for summer baseball and really did not appreciate. I got a bunch of people from the baseball world who contacted me afterwards, and they're like, "Dude, summer baseball is a big deal. Like they play semi-pro ball, and those leagues I never care about because they don't take place around here. So I never even met. Who wants to go and play in Maine? But apparently that's a big deal to the prospects. So I think that college baseball could replace that if they really tried. I think that it'd be a lot easier just to package Michigan baseball and put it on BTN than it is to have these summer leagues. But they've been going on over 100 years, and replacing that structure is a little bit more than I made it out to be. A lot more than I made it out to be.
I don't know. I think replacing that structure is a good idea. And it's eminently doable, and they can go on with whatever way they want. But in fact, it would be better for Michigan, it'd be better for the Big Ten, it'd be better for most of the country if they continue having college baseball in the summer, wood bats, and which is one of the big deals in the New England leagues. Wood bats, beer, summer baseball at night, crowds, you make money. It's a no-brainer. But for some reason, the Big Ten is too gutless to actually do it. But that's what it comes down to.
That voice is from the venerable Craig Ross, as you hear me just introduce him all the time. So good morning, Craig.
One thing before you get to the star of the show, last week you and I did golf, Sam, and did you get any calls from the pro golf tour or even Liv about being a pro golf commentator? I did.
I joked that, man, I've talked more golf in the past 2 months than I have the however many years I've been on the air here combined. That's how much golf we've talked in. But it's an intriguing topic, and there's actually a correlation to Michigan that I want to get to here shortly. But no, Craig, I didn't get any.
I actually did. I got a call. They told me, man, you're just too noisy, and you don't know how to whisper. You're an idiot. So no, we're not hiring you. So that's how it went. Well, but it was interesting to talk about golf or be a part of that. So thanks.
Yeah, well, forget whoever it is that told you that. Also, have to bring in Mr. MGoBlog himself, Brian Cook. Brian, how are you this morning?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. So let's jump right into the news of the edition. This was the name that when we said Jet, who are you looking at? Who are you talking to? Who are you trying to get to come to Michigan? The first name he mentioned was Joey Baker. Joey Baker is in the fold now. Duke transfer to Michigan. So what do you make of that addition, Mr. Cook?
Well, he's 6'6". He played in the ACC 10 minutes a game, career 38% three-point shooter. And he's a guy who I don't think is going to be relied on for heavy minutes, but he can give you 15 off the bench as a bench shooter, and that's something that the team really needed. So he fills a spot as a backup too. I don't think at this point in his career you're looking for a breakout or anything, but he's a guy who was a top 40 recruit at one point. Probably has a little bit of skill, but mostly he's going to absorb shots and knock them down at a high rate.
You think it's reasonable to expect him to be a shooting upgrade to Caleb?
Well, is it a home game or a road game?
bad news. He has the same exact splits. I think he's like 27% on the road and 46% on the at home.
Well,
Like this is a
his numbers are not real thick right now. He has, 10 minutes a game for the duration of his career. Didn't really play a lot in the NCAA tournament. Not a guy that Duke really wanted to rely on, but as a guy who comes off your bench and is a functional player, I think he's a good pickup.
And you get in a system, you have a big that's gonna help you, that can find you open on the perimeter, and you will get some open looks and change the scenery. Often that can lead to a resurgence for a guy, or innocent. I mean, he's what do you say resurgence? Where was he to begin with, right? So I'm curious what you make of this addition, Craig.
Well, it's sensible. I mean, I worry a bit in that he played 5 minutes in the opener in the NCAA tournament, and then 0 minutes for the rest of the NCAAs. So now Duke was in a pure 6-man rotation.
that was an injury. That was
yeah.
an injury. So
Yeah. So, but Duke for most of the year was pretty much in a 6-man rotation anyway, and so they, but it's a little concerning maybe, but he doesn't have the upside that Caleb Houston has, that's for sure, I think. But I do believe that he'll be a functional piece for Michigan, and I think it makes sense from both sides. One thing Brian said when we were talking last week, not on radio, was that, hey, if Adrian Nunez could shoot, would he have played? And I think the answer to that is yes. Even with his limitations defensively, if he could have knocked down threes, he would have played. And I'm guessing Joey Baker can knock down threes, so I think he's going to play. It makes sense to put shooters around Aiden.
Hunter
Dickinson. Sorry, it makes sense to put shooters around him. So yes, I'm all in favor of this particular choice.
Seth Fisher.
Yeah. Well, the hip injury that knocked him out of the playoffs is a bit of a concern because how much is he going to be back from that? Is that going to sap any of his defense? Now, he was a top 40 recruit, and so he has some length to him. He's actually got some pretty long arms. So defensively, he could be a plus if he's all healed from that. If he's not, then you might actually be looking at Adrian Nunez on defense. And we talk about just the shooters all the time. It's kind of like one of our memes in basketball coverage. And we've wanted Michigan to have a guy on the roster like that, especially last year when they really had some spacing issues. And I think he's going to fit well. Like when you're going to need to pull Jet off the court. You're going to have to talk to, the true freshman cannot be asked to go out there and play 35 minutes a game. So you're going to need some backup. You're going to need some minutes at that spot. And I really like the look of that lineup because, Hunter can step out, but if you have Williamson at the, you have TW at the 4, he can shoot a 3, right? So now you have spacing everywhere. That's going to create it's going to be really hard to double off of on Hunter because everyone out there is going to be able to shoot. And that was something they didn't really have last year.
Yeah, so I think that, again, I always preface my comments about Caleb saying I'm not trying to diminish, disparage, or denigrate him in any way, but I don't think it's unreasonable to expect Joey Baker to at least be what Caleb was. Now, can he be better than what Caleb was last year? Can he be what we hoped Caleb would be this year from a shooting perspective? Is a question. Michigan clearly betting on his health, to your point, Seth. I think they probably looked into that a decent clip before they agreed to bring him on and feel like it's likely that he is going to be totally healed and ready to go. And you talk about a guy who hasn't really been in the system, who clearly got buried on a roster. On top of that, you give him some new life when you say, hey, man, all you got to do is knock down open looks in a system where, hey, it's designed to create those. We aren't just throwing the ball, to our talented 5-star and saying, go get it. That's not how it's going to work here. And hey, you happen to be moving him from a scenario where there had to be loads of pressure. Michigan looked at Joey Baker initially, and they were like, but there's no way we're going to get a dude out of Fayetteville, North Carolina to leave Duke of Carolina. Can you imagine being from there, playing there, and not doing well there? What kind of pressure that must have been to get out of that, I think, is another thing that could maybe help infuse some life into his game here in his final term.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting huge things here. Like, if you've been around the Duke program for 4 years and you're shooting 40% from three and you're not really getting minutes, there's some issues, I bet, because Duke is not a team that's loaded up with shooters on an annual basis, right? Like, that's one of their problems. Kentucky and Duke often have the same problem where they just have some dude chucking it at 25% from the perimeter because he just came out of high school and he doesn't really know better than AAU ball. So those teams, like, when Kentucky went out and got CJ Frederick, I'm like, that makes a ton of sense. So I feel like Baker is probably not going to be a guy who you're seeing out there for 30 minutes a game, but they needed another guard. They needed a shooter. He fits the bill.
Seems right.
Yeah, I'm not expecting him to be a world beater either. Just to knock down open shots consistently in 15 to 20 minutes a game. Do that, and I would consider this a really good and important move for Michigan, and bringing some veteran leadership too. I mean, there's something to be said for a guy who, while he didn't play a ton, to your point, was a captain at Duke. But understand, look, when you're a shooter at Duke, that has different kind of. I mean, you better be JJ Redick. if you aren't that, then you don't play. I think that's kind of the bar.
We should point out that Duke had the #1 offense in the country last year on Ken Pom. So maybe it's not the worst thing in the world that this guy couldn't get on the floor for more than about 10 minutes a game.
With
that was a tough rotation to crack.
Yeah. With a couple lottery picks in there as well. So, I like the pickup for them, for the fit on this roster and what their needs are. Now the question is, where do they go from here? So when I checked into this, I've been checking on it consistently, certainly checked on it after Jet said Joey Baker, right? Other guy he mentioned was the Baylor transfer who came off the board shortly after that, as a matter of fact. But I heard, Joey Baker is definitely a legit target, and then an international target. The international target, found out a week or so later, wound up being Youssef Khayat. So Youssef Khayat. Now, why did I ask about what's going on with why was I digging into that? Because there continues to be this buzz, not from the program, but on the word on the street, I'll call it, that something's going on with Amani Bates. Now, I know conversations have been had about Amani Bates, but nothing close to it being a done deal, like some of the scuttlebutt has been suggesting that's out there. I'm curious what you guys make of Youssef Khayat, and then, of course, of all the ongoing Amani Bates talk.
Well, you're not just recruiting Amani Bates; you're recruiting his dad, and I don't want his dad associated with anything I like.
I don't even like him in Ypsilanti. Like, that's too close. I was happiest when he was committed to Michigan State. I was like, yes, do it. Go there.
So, I think that there are challenges to recruiting a star caliber kid like that, and he's at home. And there are clearly some friction there on the Penny side, the details of which I don't know. But it does make you have to survey, if you're Juwan Howard, and I'm sure you know Penny, I'm sure you know Rashid, I'm sure you know all the coaches, and I'm sure you're making that call to see, hey, what happened? What was it that made that not go? Because you can't ever just take the word from the kid or the word from his dad. You have the resources to really be able to get the other side and then figure it out and figure out whether that's a good move for you chemistry wise. Now we're having this discussion at the same time that it's just sounding like the buzz is much louder than the actual talk inside the program. Again, heard about conversations, Haven't heard about anything to suggest that this is something that is actually likely to happen, Craig.
Yeah, I agree. I think there have been conversations. I know there have been conversations inside of the program, but it doesn't sound like Juwan Howard feels like this is the most sensible direction to move. In particular, I think since, Frankie Collins, there's a lot of noise why Frankie Collins left was Frankie's dad, that he was the mover and player. And I'm not sure how much he wants to be, have a parent running the program as opposed to Juwan Howard running the program.
Also, Amani Bates is terrible.
No, he's not.
He's terrible.
No,
I don't think he's terrible.
He's terrible.
I don't agree with that.
Have you seen him play basketball lately?
Yeah, I agree.
He's a rail thin 6'9" wing who does not get to the basket, does not shoot well from three. He had a 91 O rating and took a quarter of Memphis's shots when he was on the court. And they only got good when they stopped playing him.
That's all true.
He's not good at basketball.
That's all 100% true.
You can,
but
like, Amani Bates should go to the G League and just do nothing except work on his game, and then he'll be good when he's 25. Next year, he's going to be like a bad player.
Well,
he was a bad player in high school. I watched him play Frankie Collins. Like his high school team, he didn't pass the ball to anybody.
That's the issue. That is the issue. I think shot selection is completely off kilter, and I think it's not a skill set thing, because I think Amani Bates has an elite skill set, but how you apply it? How do you apply it? If you're shooting with reckless abandon, that's just not going to translate to good team ball.
Yeah, how's he going to fit in Michigan's concept? He can go to Arizona State. He can go 10-24 with Bobby Hurley and Frankie. That's kind of his vibe. Just he needs to find someone who will roll out the ball for him and just get out of his way and not have a very good basketball team. But he doesn't fit at Michigan.
I agree. He's been a train wreck, and he was a train wreck at Memphis last year. But I've seen him play live. And you can't look at that guy and not say that there's physical ability there. Now, the fact that he has physical ability doesn't mean he helps your program or doesn't mean he can play basketball, but he does have physical ability. And if you could sort of do a Frankenstein on him, do like a brain transplant, then there might be something there.
To me, this is a scenario.
Blankenberg's brain in Jeff Gilson's body would have had the best NHL defenseman of all time.
But see, so here's the flip side of this. Is the kind of scenario that Juwan Howard is supposed to be uniquely equipped to deal with it. The kind of talent that may be limited by, the skill set that might be limited by application.
Wait, no. I think it's the exact opposite. There is a gene in every single coach where they see some talented guy and be like, I'm the one. I'm the guy who can get it out of this guy. I'm the one who can perform the brain transplant. I can teach that guy how to pass. I can teach that guy how to shoot. I am the greatest coach in the world. Therefore, I'm going to mold this into a great player. Most of the time, they're wrong. Most of the development that players have it's up to the players themselves. And when you look at a guy like that, Juwan Howard has been in the NBA so long. He's seen so many of these guys come out early. He's seen so many of these people come with people around them. He knows better than anybody, probably better than Penny, because he spent more time in the coaching ranks. What that entails and what that means for your team. And he's probably the one saying no. I bet you some of his assistants are like, hey, man, all this talent wants to come here, and we're the best coaching staff in college ball. We can teach this guy how to play. And Juwan's probably will be like, no, you can't, and no, I don't.
I don't know if that's quite the dynamic, but I put it this way. I know that there are conversations. I agree with you that most coaches are often wrong. I agree with you that you have evidence that you would probably be wrong in this particular. I mean, he just came from playing for Penny and Rasheed and Larry Brown, right? I mean, these are NBA guys that have dealt with scenarios where you had some players that you had to kind of rein in some, right? That you had to mold more than others, and it didn't work. Now, again, you had the resources of Juwan Howard to place a call or some calls and kind of figure out what really happened. But back to my original point, this is the kind of scenario that Juwan might look into a lot deeper than a lot of other coaches because he is uniquely equipped to deal with this kind of scenario. However, that doesn't mean that he will, especially because of all of these the points that we just laid out with it not working out in Memphis. And here's the other part that would be a deterrent for me, unless I thought that I was getting 100% buy-in. Hey, what if I want to bring you off the bench? Would you be all right with that? Right? That kind of thing. I mean, I would be putting scenarios like that in front of him. Why? Because I think that Jet Howard can be the guy. Like, Jet Howard has all of the ingredients to be the guy at Michigan. He has game to go get offense himself. He can create for others. He is a guy that, despite growing up very, very privileged, he does not exude privilege in a way that would be obnoxious to others, right? Like, he's a good dude that other dudes like to be around. Like, you can build around Jet, and anything that would maybe alter that course, I would be very, very reluctant to do if it were me.
Yeah, that's a great point. And along that line, Youssef Khayat. What do you guys think of him? If you looked, there isn't a lot to look at, unfortunately, but I know this has been the ordinary comparison, but doesn't he remind you a bit of Franz? Maybe Franz light. I mean, he's Lebanese, he's playing in France. Nobody really has heard much about him. I don't think Michigan was enthusiastic about publicizing their recruitment of him. And the tape I could look at, I like what I saw there a lot. There's a lot there, and he's not a one and done. He's probably a 2 or 3 year guy, but there's a lot to like in his game, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Now,
this is a dude. This was
Yeah.
who I didn't know it was Youssef Khayat. I just knew Joey Baker, an international guy.
Mhm.
That was what I heard when I was, sort of feeling around about Amani Bates. So this is a dude. Like, if it works out with Youssef Khayat, he'll be the guy, and then let's go get ready for the season, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I agree. I mean, who I see is a poor man's Franz, especially defensively.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm curious what based on what you saw, what you've read, Brian, what you think of Youssef Khayat.
Well, he's not quite as long and lanky as
Mhm.
Franz is, but I do think that he is in the same kind of mold where he's going to be a guy who can guard maybe 2 through 4 with 5 in a pinch. I don't know if he's 6'8" or 6'10", but those two
6'8". I think he's 6'8".
Well, you see him listed at different
I
heights,
know.
and like which one's real? I don't know.
Some of those are meters, by the way.
But I mean, he's a guy who probably isn't going to be taking a lot of guys to the hole, doesn't have a whole lot of lateral agility, but seems to have a good shooting stroke, like has a floater, has some skill, is a guy who can, like Franz, be a secondary driver. And I think that, he runs the floor really well, and that's for a guy his size, that's pretty important. So yeah, I mean, I would take him in a heartbeat. Like, he's already 19, so I don't know if he's got a whole lot of NBA upside unless he just completely blows up. But, he was coming from Lebanon, so he was maybe behind the times there because, he didn't get to France until a couple years ago. So it's he might be a late bloomer. He's a guy who, I don't know, he's not the same kind of player, but he kind of reminds me of Bones Highland, in which, like, there's this guy who just kind of comes on the radar and you look at his tape and you're like, yeah, I'd take that guy. And he's definitely going to be a plus athlete at the Big Ten level. He's an above the rim player, guy I think would be a great pickup.
Yeah. Now the noise is he's down to Michigan, Xavier, who else? Two
It
other
was-
Wake
was-
Forest
and DePaul.
and DePaul. But it sounds like from his comments, it's Michigan and Xavier. And the head coach at Xavier is who? Who's the
Sean
head-
Miller.
Yeah,
Sean
he's back.
Miller. Right. And so the other point is that I don't think he can visit. There's certain visa issues, so he's going to have to make his decision by Zoom or whatever. Which my
Hopefully
guess
he
is,
doesn't like being screamed at.
yeah. So I don't know. Beyond that, I mean, it seems like Cincinnati or Ann Arbor is an easy choice, but you wouldn't know that unless
Yes, you've been.
you've actually been there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I had that same thought. Like, how do you
Uh-huh.
quantify for him, for someone who's not just unfamiliar when it comes to the difference between Ann Arbor and Cincinnati, but I mean, he's just, I mean, the country, the just,
yeah,
he just can't really conceptualize the difference between Xavier and Michigan. That's why he's sort of talking about them in the same breath, like they're similar, and they couldn't be. I mean, these are not the same. If you believe that the coaching is equal. I'm not saying that they are. I'm just saying the way that he talked about him. He said, "Hey, look, Sean Miller was very successful at Arizona. Sean Miller had Lauri Markkanen, right? Not at Xavier, but he had Lauri Markkanen. Like, you look at Juwan and the success he's had at Michigan with bigs, with international bigs, right? I mean, it's like, hey, man, this is just." And then Michigan versus Xavier, this is not equal. How do you convince a guy of that? How do you show a guy that over Zoom is a challenge for Michigan?
Well,
yeah,
you could
that's
just
what I see the issue.
show
too.
him all of Xavier's NCAA victories in the past 5 years.
That's a point.
Pretty.
But I think this is the problem for Michigan. I mean, I think I would be very confident he would be here if he was actually visiting Michigan and visiting the other places. But I'm less confident given the fact it's just going to be a telephone Zoom decision. So you just don't know. How much do I trust Sean Miller? Zero. And so who knows what's being said there. Incidentally, along these lines, we're talking about team players, and I don't know if I mentioned this 2 weeks ago or not. The more I look at Doug McDaniel, the more I like him. And I saw some stuff from his coach this week, and he played in a good high school program, and the coach there said that he's a better player than Jeremy Roach, who's at Duke. That he's a better player, a better passer than Aaron Thompson, who's the all-time assist leader at Butler, and that he's better than Eric Green, who is the player of the year, I think, in that conference at Virginia Tech last year.
That sounds like you talking about a Lithuanian boxer from 1950.
Yeah, well, and this is the head coach, but he was the head coach of these other guys too, his high school head coach. And so, and the more I look at his tape, the more I say, yeah, talk about a guy whose head is right in a basketball game. And I mean, I think he'll be the best passer at Michigan since Eric Turner.
Wow.
Who I think has been the best passer I've ever seen at Michigan. And so I'm really I'm thinking more and more now. Defensively, I don't know what they're going to do with Doug. I admit that could be a problem, but as an offensive player, I really am getting enthusiastic about him, and I think this may work out just fine in the backcourt with what they have right now.
Yeah, I guess for me, I'm just I'm not really looking at this year as him being a big time impact guy. But I hope over the course of 4 years that maybe by the end of his career he could approach giving you some X-like contribution on the court. I'd like to see that at the end of his career. I think it's going to be a minute before he's able to be a guy that you rely upon and give him the ball and let him run the team. I just don't know that you'll get that this year. I would probably, definitely going to see it be Jalen Llewellyn, but
I think so.
I would not be surprised if you see that the next guy that they look at in terms of initiating the offense, and people might scoff at it, but Jet, you watch.
Oh, I think Kobe Buffkin is a guy.
And Kobe.
Like, he was a combo, and I think that Michigan will have a couple of combos in the backcourt, and there won't be like a clear point guard. And the thing about Doug is, like, I like his potential. I think he's got upside as a pull-up shooter, which is really important these days. And he's obviously a great passer, super quick. 5'9" freshman point guard. Those guys are not instant stars.
Right.
They take a minute to figure out how to get their shots up and get everything.
There have been a few exceptions over the years. One who played in our county, because Earl Boykins was a star at 5'3" in minute 1. And so it can
Earl
be done.
Boykins is like the outlier of all outliers.
I know, but it can be done.
This is like every NBA discussion that starts with Spud Webb, right? Like you're already talking about the one guy who fucks the trend.
Yeah,
I hope Craig winds up being right that we're talking about the best passer since Eric Turner. I mean, there have been some good point guards at Michigan and had some pretty good assist number. Gary Grant had some good assist numbers.
That's Doug's thing, though. Doug is my theory on this is that, Coach Howard had 2 guys whose last name is Howard on the roster, and he's like, how am I going to get these guys the ball? And just sorted the entire class by passer rating and was like, that guy right there.
I
don't know who's going to be the Terry Mills of the point guards and call in and berate Craig about this take.
Well, the guy hasn't played a single minute yet, so I don't think anyone's going to berate me yet. It'll happen, there's no doubt, and there may be justification for it too.
All right, so hey, I have a question I need you guys to ponder during the break, and it sort of stems from the conversation we had about Eric Bakich, where Seth was very, very clear in stating that our expectations for Michigan competing with Clemson to keep Eric, those expectations were unrealistic. And I wonder, as we see not just baseball lose, Eric Bakich, and you got some players in the portal, softball, Storako goes to Oklahoma. I don't know all the reasons behind that. But then you look on the football recruiting side of things, and you really see some developments there with some of the schools elsewhere and the success that they're having. That I know there's a long way to go, but it does make you wonder, with the current landscape, might we have to adjust our expectations there too? Ponder that for a beat, and we'll get to that on the other side here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK, The Ticket. Yeah,
How much groaning do you want me to do while I ponder this?
I'm getting for a long time I thought it was unlikely that Dante would go far away from home. I'm starting to come off of that.
Oh, really?
I'm starting to think that it is more of a possibility than I or people around him thought it to be when he first started talking about it.
So where is that? Alabama?
Oregon is definitely trending up with him.
Yeah.
Oregon is definitely trending up with him. So,
well, we'll see. But I mean, there are other guys that Michigan's recruiting, and we do have JJ McCarthy for 3 more years, right? Probably.
Right. It's not
a disaster.
What we're talking about now is not something that they're going to feel
right
for the next year or two. I mean, they have enough on the roster now and coming in this class to sustain them for a couple of years. But if their level of recruiting, if this isn't like a huge anomaly, like what we're seeing right now has has to be a huge anomaly.
Quick break, guys. We're back in about 20 seconds.
Then, man, we're in for a new sort of competitive landscape.
Well, you sound very, I mean, like a lot of fans sort of down on what's going on in Michigan recruiting right now.
Well, they have there's some things to be concerned about. Not
Stand by,
panic,
guys. Coming back on
not
radio.
panic, but there's some things to be concerned.
Yeah.
Back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTKA.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side. Listen, if you are in the market for a new vehicle and you're looking for a great lease deal, get on board with Brighton Ford. That's where John Cuter and his great crew will take awesome care of you. And folks, through July 7th, you well-qualified lessees can lease a 2022 Ford Explorer for as low as $296 a month or a 2022 Ford F-150 for as low as $231 a month, both with only $2,000 down. That's plus first payment, taxes, doc fee, title, license, and state fees due at signing. Security deposit will be waived. You'll get 7,500 miles per year on a 24-month lease. Just call 1-800-NEW-FORD. Make it out to the lot at 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan. Then you can get on board with Brighton Ford. So, Roundtable crew. I do my best to try to offer perspective to especially recruiting fans, right? It's early in the recruiting cycle. This is not time to panic. You look in the rankings right now, you'll see Alabama low in the rankings. You'll see A&M low in the rankings. Those schools aren't going to finish
Northwestern is top 15.
No, and I think they'll probably finish with a top 25 class when all is said and done. But their class is clearly buoyed by class number, how many guys they have in that class. But at the same time, is a high quality class for them. But when you look at Ohio State, who's not ever going to go anywhere, you look at Penn State, who for whatever reason, James Franklin continues to recruit at a high level, right? Notre Dame suddenly recruiting at a higher level than we're accustomed to seeing Notre Dame recruit at. And the same thing with Michigan State. So I'm calling attention to those schools because that's the immediate competition. More than looking at what Bama's doing and what A&M's doing and what Clemson's doing. It's your immediate competition, your contemporaries. And all of those schools are recruiting at a very, very high level. So it begs the question, how far will Michigan recover in this cycle? Like, you really think that they can catch Penn State or Ohio State, or are we talking about just catching Michigan State at this point? And then with the convergence of NIL and the portal, and we're sort of seeing the effects more and more, especially NIL wise, are we going to have to brace ourselves for the kind of reality that Seth tried to brace us for on the baseball side of things? I'm curious if you think there are signs of concern, or is it not anything to see here at this point?
I think you got to be concerned, right? Like you just mentioned that all of Michigan's immediate competition seems to be recruiting pretty well in the NIL level, and Michigan is not. I mean, they're languishing in a range that is usually not where they are. They're losing out on quarterback recruits that they should have an in with, and I am concerned. And I think the NFL dalliance, a lot of personnel turnover, we've talked about this before, isn't really helping. And I think those are transient things. And I also think the NIL issue is a transient thing because Michigan is maybe dipping its toe into the water when everybody else is going full bore. That won't last, but I am concerned that we're going to be a little bit behind the curve here for a few years.
Yeah, my measure for concern really has been focused mostly on the quarterback recruiting dynamic with CJ Carr and Dante Moore, knowing that Michigan's going to get some guys. They're going to get some highly rated guys here later in the cycle. Maybe we can't predict exactly who they're all going to be, but they'll get some 4-star, some top 247 guys in there. But what would be particularly concerning to me about the quarterback dynamic is that these are 2 5-star quarterbacks here, 2 5-star quarterbacks in the state, close proximity to Michigan or to campus, both of whom had really, really deep ties to Michigan. And if you miss on those 2 guys, that I think makes you have to kind of look and see, okay, what do we have some issues that we really need to pay some attention to here to correct if we can't get either of those guys. Now, the jury's still out on Dante Moore, but I'd be lying to you if I said that I am less confident about less confident in my belief that he won't go away than I was, say, a month or 2 ago. I think I'm not as confident in that position anymore.
There's some good in this, some potential good in this. I mean, a lot of potential good in this. I mean, yes, I think a lot may be going on because most schools or many schools are not in the NIL deal. They're in the pay for play deal. And this is what Manuel and Harbaugh have tried to stress, that no, we're not transactional. We're transformational. We're not going to shy away from NIL monies, but we're not going to do pay for play either. Ohio State made it clear that they're right in the pay for play basket. We need $13 million to ward off the portal. What could be clearer?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in the long run or in the mid run, that may play better for Michigan. But also, I'm not such a big stars guy. I know they have some meaning. Brian and others have said, hey, a 5-star is likely to be better than a 4-star, is likely to be better than a 3-star. Well, that's all true. But if you look at the first round of the NFL draft every year, it's about half 2 and 3 stars. And so the question is whether you can evaluate. And if you're forced to evaluate, maybe you become John Beilein. In other words, I mean, and they have done a good job. Michigan has done a good job with guys who are not big time high school recruits.
They have, but number one, they had some ins that they don't have anymore to find those guys. Number two, the industry is so much better.
Hold on, Seth. What does that? Yeah. What does that mean?
They had like Courtney Morgan, like telling them, "Hey, this Damani Dent guy, call him right now."
Yeah.
Right. And that's how they found some of those guys. Two, the industry is so much better at this now. So what Michigan does have a very good talent evaluation program. So does Notre Dame. I think what shifted is that Notre Dame is now winning those battles, but they've had guys forever where like they look at him, he's a 3-star nobody, and then he blows up to a 4-star, or like a Morian Walker should have been. It's just the guy was too skinny for anybody to give him credit. But like they've been good at getting those guys identified. They do tend to blow up later in the cycle, and they do tend to get late offers at the end of the cycle. If they're going to be losing those guys to Notre Dame and Penn State because both those programs kind of recruit on their level, that is a problem. If the quarterback thing, I think, is just too narrow, because it could just be like maybe CJ Carr does not want to be the Carr at Michigan. Maybe Dante Moore just doesn't want to be coached by Matt Weiss. I don't know. I'm making these up, but I'm just saying that it could be factors that just relate to those kids specifically, where like they don't want to be shoehorned into playing at Michigan. But the NIL thing is a big deal. Michigan does have to start looking at this real. And it was very frustrating yesterday when they had JJ out there talking about how, we're not going to have NIL be something where you pay for play. We should earn it. We all should be getting in the car that we belong in now, and then we earn a bigger car. Like, you've earned it. If you have gotten to this level, if you are a top recruit in the country, that means you have put in ungodly amount of hours to making yourself a great football player and demonstrating that you have the talent and the ability to learn and push yourself to be better. Those guys, to get to that level, to where you're already a 5-star recruit, those guys have pushed themselves so hard that they have earned it already, and that's what they're getting. They are valuable to these schools as recruits. And Michigan's got to start looking at this as, yes, you pay people when they provide value to your institution. That is how it works.
Ain't happening. I mean, Michigan has made it clear this is not happening. And as long as Ward Manuel is the athletic director, as long as Jim Harbaugh is the coach, it ain't happening. And so Michigan's going to have to do something else. And I'm not saying, and to me, the short term problem is the dalliance with the Vikings. I mean, and other coaches are using that. They're saying the program's unstable. They can point to things in the program that looks chaotic and unstable. And that to me is more likely the short-term problem. I still think you can evaluate. And even if recruiting services have gotten better, which I'm not denying, 3 years from now, you're still going to look at the first round of the NFL draft and it's going to be half 2 and 3 stars, same as it's been for the last 10 years. And that's just, and so it's going to be incumbent on Harbaugh and his staff to actually be able to evaluate, what's out there.
Yeah. So look, will there be an even greater premium on evaluation? Probably. Yeah. You hope at a place like Michigan that you can have your cake and eat it too, that you can recruit at elite level, and understanding that you are going to have more limitations academically and NIL approach wise than some other schools. And then you fill in those gaps with your skills so that you can incorporate both. But if you have to skew so far on the side of development, then what's your expectation for how often you compete? Like, because I mean, I could give you some great examples of guys that Michigan has developed here over the last few years. Hassan Haskins being maybe one of the most vivid, right? Well, this was his senior year. I mean, are you looking to compete with Ohio State every year? Is that realistic, or are we putting that aside and saying, okay, as long as you can compete with Ohio State every 4 years, then we're fine. That'll be the new expectation. That's kind of the crux of my question here. I mean, we all aspire to have a program that competes perennially with the elites. Are we going to have to adjust that aspiration, right? To say, okay, we aspire now to compete every few years with the elites. What say you?
I mean, yeah, I think that Craig's point about the draft is kind of overlooks the fact that there are far fewer 4 and 5 stars than 3 and 2 stars.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have a higher hit rate there. You do have a better chance of getting a player there. So everybody gets a certain number of rolls of the dice, and you want to weight those dice as much as possible. And Michigan won't be doing that if they don't recruit at the level that they used to. So the issue is, they'll probably have some up years where they're able to do what they did last year. But yeah, if you want to consistently compete with Ohio State, then you got to do better than what you're doing right now.
I agree with this if we're just rolling dice. If we're rolling dice, you're absolutely 100% right. But what I'm saying is Michigan in the current environment, not being able to go into the portal, not deciding to be in the bag game, in the pay for play game. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying Seth is wrong, but that's how it shouldn't be. But Michigan isn't going to do it. And so
fire Ward. I'm not. No, if they want to, Jim Harbaugh wants to win football.
It don't matter.
Jim Harbaugh wants to win football games. He's got a boss. I don't believe that Jim Harbaugh is looking at this out and saying, you know what, I don't want my players to make, because he's been consistently for the players in a lot of different things. I don't think I've ever.
I think he's hold on. I think he's explained this very well. He's made it very clear and been very consistent with this. Not just when he's in the media, but when he's talking to people off camera, that this transactional, transformational, sort of dichotomy, if you will, that's him too. That's his belief.
I know, because Jim has always found a way to get it done, no matter what the scenario. You give him Stanford and they won't let guys in. He's like, okay, fine, I'm going to make it work anyway, right? You give him Michigan and all the brouhaha that we got, and the Michigas, he gets it done anyway. And Jim's trying to find a way to get it done anyway. Ward says these are the parameters. Jim says, okay, I'm going to figure out a way, because that's what Jim's always done. But Michigan does not need to set parameters like this. And if Ward cannot see the competitive advantage that Michigan has in a world where your donors can provide money to get better players, then I don't know what we're doing. Like, that's what we were for NIL, in part because this is supposed to be good for Michigan because we can raise more money than anybody else. But you're going to have to play the game the way that everyone plays the game. And I'm sick of this concept that, like, oh, these guys haven't earned it yet. They've earned it. They are valuable. The fact that we are talking about Dante Moore on multiple episodes of this podcast, even though he's not played a single down of college ball, tells you that this guy is valuable to the institution, the University of Michigan. He should be paid if you're valuable to your institution.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that point, except that Oregon will probably pay him, and Michigan's going to say, no, you come here, you have opportunities. That's it. And that's the environment they're in. And that's the environment that they're going to have to somehow try and succeed in. Is that hard? Sure. Yeah. Is it possible? Yeah, I think it is. And so, but it's just the way it is right now. So
yeah. I hear you. I hear. He said it's time to go. I think that
sorry.
this is ingrained in the culture, and I think it's pretty uniform across the board. I don't think it's just Ward that feels that way, or it's just Jim that feels that way. I think it's institutional. And how do you adjust to the times? I think is the question for Michigan moving forward. We'll see. We'll continue this discussion in the coming days and weeks. We got to get out of here, though. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Michigan Insider. MGoBlog Roundtable back next Thursday. We'll talk NFL, NBA draft tomorrow here on Sports Talk 1050 WTK, The Ticket.